joining what now is our third week of our campaign action series and our fourth week and our second week of our China's Not Our Enemy action series. My name is Grace. I'm Code Pink's engagement manager, and I am so happy to see some familiar faces tonight, some new faces, but regardless, all faces that are excited to take action for China, for peace, and for the planet. If you have missed any of our webinars, call-in parties, didn't get some of our resources, we will send in the chat where you can find everything from all of our action weeks and also all of our campaigns here at Code Pink. And stick around at the end and you'll hear about all the upcoming actions this week and what we'll be transitioning into next week. I'm going to go over the norms for tonight and then pass it to Jody to get us started. But as always, be respectful. This isn't a debate, but a discussion. We are not here to mediate arguments. We're here to learn from each other. Be kind, be curious, be ready to take action. And please, again, if you didn't hear anything else I said, please stay muted. We are recording, we're live streaming. We use these amazing webinars for radio shows later, and we want everybody to enjoy this content tonight from right now until forever. So please, if you have thoughts, if you have questions, put them in the chat. Hopefully later we will be able to have some form of a discussion where we can all share our thoughts and questions. But during the discussion, let's all just stay muted. And yeah, I'll pass it to Jody to get the night started.
Thank you so much, Grace. Thank you for joining us to learn more about our campaign at Code Pink, China is Not Our Enemy. We've spent almost the last 6 years educating people, especially progressives in the US, that like all the wars the US start, they first use propaganda and lies to make their target your enemy. Code Pink was a disruption of one of those propaganda drives to war, George W. Bush using the color-coded alerts, orange, red, and yellow, to frighten the American people about Iraq and use that fear as permission for a war on an innocent country. We called Code Pink for peace. The war on terror has killed almost 5 million people in the Middle East and cost $22 trillion. So when we say China is not our enemy, we are speaking out of the lived experience of the brutality and costs of war, like the brutality and lies we are witness to every day around Palestine and Gaza. So we have found the most effective way for you to know that China is not your enemy is to hear stories from those who have been on this journey with us and have had their own awakening experience beyond the veil and crust of lies to the reality that they personally experience. This is not a pro-China campaign. It is a campaign to get in the way of the war the US wants to wage on China. And it is very heated this week as they continue to spread lies like China is about to invade Taiwan. When I ask people in China about this, they look at me in shock. How can you people in America think that China would bomb its own people? Do people in the US not understand that even their president says there is one China, which includes Taiwan? There are so many lies spread about China. Reflect on why and see how they are meant to use you as a tool of war. We are here to help you resist the onslaught of lies that have been funded by your tax dollars. Last year, Congress approved $1.4 billion to lie to you about China and make you hate it. They don't even try to hide what they're doing. We know what the cost of these lies are to Gaza. Wars are started with lies and ended with truth. That is the intent of this campaign. And now our amazing, brilliant China's Not Our Enemy campaign coordinator, Megan Russell, will introduce you to the members of our team to share their experiences of China. Thank you for joining us. Megan, take it away.
Thank you so much, Jody. I'm so excited. Tonight we have some of our most active China's Not Our Enemy community members that are going to speak to you about their experiences and ways that they've all taken action. And we also have a few that were members of our first Code Pink community trip to China. So they'll be speaking of how they've taken action in the US and as well as their experience traveling China and just what they've learned. So I would first like to introduce Michael Snell-Feikma. Michael is a decades-long anti-war and solidarity activist. He has a master's degree in history with a focus on Latin American intellectual history. He currently lives in Harrisburg, Virginia, and is a member of Peace Praxis, the Shenandoah Valley Anti-War Coalition, as well as China's Not Our Enemy. Thank you so much for joining us, Michael.
You're muted, Michael.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm not visible either. There we go. Okay. Yeah, did you want me to I thought the list had me in a different place. Do you want me to start out right now? Megan?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Um yeah, some of you may have already seen an earlier presentation that I did, but some of you may not have in respect to my trip to China. Um, I mean, my major involvement with the China is not our enemy uh, movement and campaign has been the trip that I took to China in November, but also very importantly the book club and reading the books that are that we've been using in the book club. And I can't praise the book club and the trip highly enough in that they've really helped deepen my understanding of China. And I think that the trip in particular made everything three-dimensional. Um, and of course, but that's very important, you know, because if you've never been to a place, it's just an abstraction to a certain extent. And when you actually go to that place, you make a physical, emotional, spiritual connection to the people in the place. And I think that's really vital in terms of doing any kind of solidarity work with people. That's been my experience. I spent a lot of time in Central America and Mexico when I was involved with opposing U.S. wars in Central America. Anyway, just to come to a key point, um, one of the things I really liked about the trip to China was its historical focus. And we went places that Western tourists don't ordinarily go to, because apparently there's not a large number of them that are pursuing the kind of the historical dimension of China. Anyway, I found that, I mean, that's my field, so it's not surprising, but I found that to be tremendously valuable. There's something about the museums where they have all the photographs, and they have, and some of them are in English, and they go into the stories of all these different individuals that were involved in the transformation and creation of modern China. And that made it all a lot more real, and I learned a lot from that. Um, uh, we also ended up going not only to museums but also to historical sites. The site of the Red Capital of the Chinese of the Red Army or the Red Movement in Roigen, and that is also where the uh, Long March began. It was across the river that we saw that they built in the middle of the night pontoon boats that enabled them to go across that river and escape encirclement by Chiang Kai-shek, and then embark on this epic 6,000-mile journey that most of them did not complete. Out of 100,000 that left, only 10,000 arrived in the base of the communist movement in the north. Um, I think that that kind of history is epic history, and it is so important to what the Chinese people went through, and to get a visceral sense of the sacrifices that they made me realize in no uncertain terms that the West is not going to be able to stop China, that they are determined to completely uh, liberate themselves from the imperialist domination and oppression, and to build the kind of socialist society that they envision. Um, and I'm all for that determination. Um, I think that even though the focus is on preventing a war against China, which it should be, but I think there's more than that involved in this. Um, in that, and we should do everything we can to stop the US aggression against China. But I think we also need to begin to work towards the kind of government in the United States that would not only not be an enemy of China's, but would be able to partner with China and and to work together with China in terms of the whole project of ecological civilization that China is working on right now. And recently, there have been some studies and articles written about China as basically leading the world towards a renewable economy. And I think we need to include that very much in our messaging to people in the U.S. Because people are in a kind of condition of despair right now in many ways, and they're in need of something which is gives the hope of a brighter future. And it's somewhat ironic that your country could be engaged in an attempt to destroy um, a a country that actually has so much to offer our country and the world. And I think that, and I think that's what the China's Not Our Enemy does do, actually, even though it is focused on preventing the war, which is very, very important, but also because part of learning that China is not our enemy is learning about China. And people have discovered that China's doing some amazing things and they want to share it. And so I guess I think that's very important. And that's going to involve, I mean, it's going to be beneficial to us, the kind of government which, would be a government that was no longer wedded to fossil fuel capitalism and that would learn some of the lessons that China presents in terms of the possibility of organizing a dynamic socialist market economy. And I know that's kind of a long stretch to think about doing that in the United States. But I take heart from the attitude of the Chinese in the 1920s when they faced a country in an incredible state of disarray and disunity and underdevelopment and so on. And they got to work figuring out how to organize and transform it. And I take inspiration from their example. And I think that's something that other Americans could do as well. So I assume my time is up.
That's great. Thank you so much, Michael. It's always a treat to hear from you. And if anybody has any questions for Michael, please drop them in the chat and we will circle back at the end with whatever remaining time we have. So next, I'd like to welcome Kurt Pierce. Kurt is a New York-based documentary sound mixer. He's been on the Code Pink trip to China, and his free time is spent organizing with the Code Pink New York City chapter and making presentations on obscure left-wing political topics. Welcome, Kurt.
Hi, hey, thanks guys. I'm happy to be here. I have a slideshow, so I'm gonna try to share my screen. Okay, cool. Share. Okay. Great. Okay, so I'm going to talk about why we should, in our organizing, focus on China and talk about China. And then I'm also going to talk about these events that we do in the New York City, in the Code Pink New York City chapter. We do these pop-up events. So I'm going to explain all that to you guys. But okay, so for why we should talk about China. Um, basically this chart just shows that in the year 2000, the US was the #1 trading partner of most countries. Um, and then now in 2024, this is only 4 years later, China is the #1 trading partner of most countries. And so oh wait, sorry, thanks. Basically, China being the #1 trading partner of most countries is going to help get the US to stop doing sanctions for a variety of reasons. Sanctions kill about 564,000 people a year. So sanctions are really terrible. They cause a lot of deaths. And Marco Rubio, I'll show you guys in this clip. He is basically afraid that we won't be able to do sanctions to countries anymore because of China. Ultimately, this is a really good thing. So I'm going to play this clip. But
If you didn't also share your sound, then you might
oh,
not.
okay. Sorry. Thanks.
Might have
How
to,
do I do that? Let me
you'll
see.
have to unshare your screen and then reshare
Okay.
your screen and hit share audio as well.
Oh, okay. So now share again. Share. Oh, share sound. Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Awesome. Okay, sorry, one sec. Let me see. I have to download a Zoom sharing audio sharing device, I think. So I guess I can try to do the presentation without that.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to
Yeah,
download something new.
yeah. Let me see. I lost my screen. See. Okay, so well, I can talk through it. Basically, Marco Rubio is scared in this clip for the fact that sanctions aren't going to work anymore. Um, so yeah, and hopefully we want that to happen basically because that'll help the global South a lot. If countries don't have to worry about sanctions anymore, countries can call out Israel way easier. Divesting from Israel and boycotting Israel will be easier. Um, this clip,
I do
um,
think that we've got to get smarter about
in this clip, Hillary Clinton says, we've got to get smarter about the economic threat. China disrupts the market. China is not a free market economy. We let them into the World Trade Organization. We sent our businesses over there. We made trade deals. They are a controlled top-down economy. You will never compete and win against them unless you take back the means of production. So basically, Hillary Clinton, in this, she's talking to a bunch of NGOs. She's saying that we are not going to be able to compete with China because it's a controlled top-down economy. If anyone tells you China is state capitalist, don't listen to them. You can tell them Hillary Clinton says that it's not. So yeah. Okay, this clip
The
is
idea of
this
globalization
clip is JD Vance at the Mark
Bert, we
Andreessen.
can hear the audio now if you
Oh,
want.
you can? Oh, cool. Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Let me play this clip.
was that rich
Okay, hold on.
The idea of globalization was that rich countries would move further up the value chain while the poor countries made the simpler things. You would open an iPhone box and it would say designed in Cupertino, California. Now, the implication, of course, is that it would be manufactured in Shenzhen or somewhere else. But I think we got it wrong. It turns out that the geographies that do the manufacturing get awfully good at the designing of things. Now, we assume that other nations would always trail us in the value chain, but it turns out that as they got better at the low end of the value chain, they also started catching up on the higher end. We were squeezed from both ends.
Yeah, basically, I wanted to show all these clips to show that The wealthy class, the billionaire class is very, very concerned with the fact that they are not going to be able to compete economically with China and that they are going to lose a lot of their power. In the Hillary Clinton clip, she kind of goes on to say that because we gave away all our manufacturing, we were at China's whims during the COVID pandemic because we couldn't manufacture our own stuff. And basically, the wealthy class is kind of freaking out about that, and that's why we're hearing a lot about China in the news. I wanted to briefly mention this book, Western Marxism by Domenico Lasordo, because this book basically just says that, Western Marxists or Western leftists, they kind of see global South countries as not pure enough or not socialist enough. And former colonized countries, they actually need nationalism, technology, military, economic development. They need those things to develop, but those four things, Western leftists can be kind of pure about or think are inherently bad. And I think that's something we have to just kind of push for. We just have to kind of go through that and try to show people that, global South countries need these things to develop. And also they need these things to get out from the foot of US imperialism. Okay, cool. Let's see. A lot of the clips of the parade, the military parade that CNN was showing, they kind of show you all this stuff that is meant to look authoritarian. But the building in the background of the military parade, you can actually see that it says, "Long live the great unity of the people of the world." And so a lot of the imagery that you get on CNN saying that China's being so authoritarian, a lot of it actually is very peaceful. And of course, the military parade that was last a big deal in the news was had the word anti-fascist in the name of it. But they don't tell you these things a lot in the news. Okay, so this is our event that we did. We throw these events around New York. We have musicians come and perform, and then we have panel discussions. And basically, it's like a community event where people can just kind of hang out. Sometimes there's food. We threw this one at King of Falafel, which is like a Palestinian-owned falafel place in Queens. ناجر وانا حكم النازل فيا ومشيت تحت الشتاء والشتاء رواني والصيف لما أتى ولع من نيراني. Okay, you guys kind of get the idea. For the sake of time, I'll keep going. Let's see. This is another event we did. And this is the Palestinian Youth Choir came and performed. Cool. But yeah, I just wanted to show clips to give you guys an idea of what the pop-up events are. They're basically community events with education and music, and there is something nice about them where it feels like it's a good way for activists and people in the neighborhood to learn together and hang out together, and they can be kind of emotionally powerful sometimes. So, let's see. This is Lee Soo-hin from Panda Aid. He's from a Chinese organization that delivers aid to Gaza. So he spoke.
Pretty simple, racist, white savior.
Here he's just speaking about the media. We had a panel discussion about the media, and we had one person speak about the media's coverage on Haiti. Amanda spoke about it on China. Sarah spoke about media's coverage on the Middle East, and Lee covered China also. So we basically just try to include covering China. What our pop-up events actually will cover like one specific thing, like one tool of imperialism, sanctions, or the media, and then we'll have different people speak about it, speak about how that thing affects different parts of the world. Okay, cool. This is Amanda Yee talking about how NSAID affects China.
The idea of a single unified China is central to CPC policy. And this is where the US comes in and they see these different pressure points like Taiwan, Hong Kong, Tibet, Xinjiang. And what they do is that they go in and they fund these different insurrectionist activities, different separatist movements in order to try and balkanize China, because they would rather see China split up into different warring ethno-states than see them unified under like a strong central government. And this is like absolutely not unique to China at all. This has been the plan for the Middle East and other different like.
Okay, great. So yeah, I just wanted to show you guys those clips just to give you an idea of like how we're trying to organize and include China into the events that we're doing. Okay, thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Kurt. It's so cool to see all the cool events that you're putting on in New York. And if anybody here is based in New York City, feel free to send me an email and I'll connect you with Kurt or the New York City chapter, and you guys can get involved in some of those great events. Yeah, so next I am really excited to welcome Dana Showtime Burton, who was born and raised in Detroit, but later moved to China, where he's been living for about 25 years. He's a founder of Iron Mike, a Chinese freestyle rap battle series that began in 2002 and is considered a pioneer of hip hop in China, fostering a generation of influential rappers and celebrating Chinese culture. Thank you for joining us from China, Dana.
Hey guys, my pleasure to be here. Excuse me, it's 8:30 in the morning. I'll just give you a little summary about my coming to China in 1999. It's interesting because now they try to say that the slogan for the United States is America first. And it's interesting. It appears like now it's Israel first. And I just want to give you a few examples of the huge difference and disparity in terms of the U.S. Investment in Israel and Detroit in the time period since I left. So I was born and raised in Detroit, and basically, when my government told me that I could die, but Israel has to live, I said F that, and I hopped on a plane to China, and I haven't really been back since 1999. The United States has given aid to Israel. It has doubled in that period. So it's up to $4 billion. And the federal housing aid to Detroit, excuse me, has dropped by 50%. Detroit school enrollment since that time has been reduced an estimated 160,000 students. It's down to around 50,000 students, a decrease of 68% since 1999. Manufacturing jobs have decreased from around 300,000 to 249,000. That's a drop of 16%. Housing units fell 375,000 in 2000 to 326,000. So 13% drop. And so by conservative estimates, Israel has killed around 60,000 to 80,000 Palestinians in Gaza since 99, with the majority occurring since, October 23. In stark contrast, why would I move to China? When people portray China as an imperialist country, they portray China as a colonizer. They try to get you to believe that China is engaging in some kind of genocide. I know some people would say, why would I trade one imperial power for another imperial power? And what I've learned is this is the greatest deception that they have, particularly over the left right now, is that people actually believe that there's this equivalence between the United States and China because they're both powerful nations. They both have to be doing the same things. And I hear things like don't whitewash one's crimes for another. And this just couldn't be further from the truth. There is no equivalence to the two. completely two different systems. And the irony is that many of the negative things that we're hearing about China, the horrific things, are actually propaganda coming from the United States and part of its war on China. But the irony leaving Detroit to China is that China has done more for Detroit than our own government has. China invested heavily in Michigan since 2000. Over 3,000 companies from China put in 4.2 billion into the state of Michigan. China imported more than 2.1 billion from Michigan. The trade has boosted Detroit's economy, especially in transportation. There are over 84 Chinese companies, automotive companies in Michigan, mostly in Detroit, representing 43% of the nation's total of foreign automobile industry. China's investment in Detroit revitalized real estate. And so, meanwhile, my government has left our people for dead. I come from a district, the 13th congressional district. It's the actual district of Rashida Tlaib. I call it Black Palestine. Um, it's been totally decimated. There's an apartheid going on right now in Detroit, Michigan. So it makes sense to me, the things that I'm seeing today, that my own government is basically pushing for a two front war, one on West Asia, and the capital is Israel, and one in East Asia, where the capital is Taiwan. And I'm just trying to not to get squashed. Quite frankly, I know it's hard for people that don't live in China to understand what it feels like to be assaulted, and this is not in the news whatsoever. People are not talking about the war on China, but for me, the past 25 years, I've seen this war ramp up, and I've seen the consequences of this war, the lives that have been lost, the fear, the lack of trust that they try to induce amongst the people. Um, things I've seen with my own eyes, journalists coming over from the United States, non NGOs, folks that are claiming that they're standing for democracy and they're doing the right thing. What they really do is they go around, they peddle tons of lies, they manipulate facts and truth, and they try to really degrade China and do anything in their power to instigate people over here to kind of rise up and be hysterical about their own government. The Kool-Aid is thick. I was here in Shanghai during the lockdowns. During that time, the people were subjected to unbelievable amounts of propaganda coming out from the States. It happened in Hong Kong in 2019. The US just flooded through the embassies, through the NGOs, through their journalists, just kept flooded and leaking stories, reporting inaccurately, not giving all the facts, and just trying to get people to rise up in the streets. Um, During the lockdowns, I was out in the streets during the so-called Urumqi street protests. I went out there with a camera, and I was online listening to how these activists, so-called progressive, so-called leftist activists, how they stir up hysteria online and try to get people to do crazy shit, like go down to the police station and start riots. And these are communities that I work in, that I serve in, that are much more intimately aware of the problems that people are facing and have been engaging in these problems. And so when you have someone that comes from the outside, who's never been here, who's never really been an activist on the ground, they don't have skin in the game, yet they claim that they're working on behalf of the people, and they do everything that's against the people, it'll drive you to do what I've decided to do is join with Cold Pink and join this campaign to push back, to let people know that China is not our enemy, and that we have to take back the narrative from the military-industrial complex, which have pretty much dominated it and are pushing this whole war agenda. So I'll end there. That's my little ramble and self-introduction. But I've been spending a lot of my time helping people when they come to China, just being a fixer, taking them around, being a guide, and wherever I can jump in to provide information from a kind of facts on the ground perspective. And so I'm always here for questions, and I'm very easy to engage with. You can find me on Twitter, Detroit Showtime with a Y, and I'll typically respond to every single person that reaches out to me. So thank you.
Thank you, Dana. You are a one-person peace activist. I know we're going to move to questions, but Megan, I wonder if you could share for everyone, because I don't know that they know um, your relationship to China and what has moved you to, spend your life standing in the way of war.
Yeah, I would love to talk about that. We do have one more speaker left
Okay.
though. So I think we'll introduce Marcella and then I can talk a little bit about my experience as well, and then we can go into any questions with remaining time. But yeah, I am really excited to give Marcella a chance to speak. Marcella is an organizer in Austin who joined us on the Code Pink China and Cuba trip. She likes to host movie nights locally in Austin and online around the topic of China and anti-imperialism more broadly. Thank you, Marcella.
Hi, yeah, thanks guys for having me. Honestly, you guys all just did so well. I almost don't know what I can add at this point. I yeah, I went on this trip having a, previous interest in China, but I was still pretty ignorant, honestly. Um, Especially about, what Dana's talking about with the whole war on China. I think it was something I was sort of vaguely aware of. But anyway, going to China is a whole other thing. Michael, I have like an intense interest in history. So this whole trip just really fed my soul, I have to say. And the way that it was set up, we started in the south and went north. We started the first few days we were in the red capital, Roijen. Um, And I guess it surprised me, how real it felt, like how tangible. Sorry, my dog is yawning. It just shocked me kind of how, despite the fact that these events are decades ago and we're in a completely new China, just how resonant the issues still are, like the how fresh. I'll give one other example, not just in Roijen in the south, but when we were in Shanghai, at the first Congress, you can visit the where the first Congress of the Communist Party was established. And there's a museum there, not in the actual building, but across the street. And one really interesting thing is you walk in and the first thing you see is American and British flags. And they're on these police uniforms and police various, yeah, shields and different things that the imperial police had during the Century of Humiliation. What is an American flag doing in this museum? That made a huge impression on me, that this century, between the 1840s and 1940s, where China was dominated by these, not completely colonized the way that India was, but it was dominated by landlords, comprador bourgeoisie who, didn't care about their countrymen, and foreign powers, right? It was so important that that's the first thing you see when you walk into the museum, and that just made a huge, huge impression on me. But anyway, being in Roijen, especially, I think the realness of the Civil War and of course the domination by the Japanese as well. I think not just from the museums we were attending and the sites that we went to, but also speaking with people who had these, especially our tour guide, had this personal connection, like it was like, like they had this idea that like we don't want to fight our revolution again. It's something like in the West, I think for left-wing people, we find it very easy to talk about sacrifice and glory and all these things. But for Chinese people, I think it having that in such recent memory, I think has totally changed their value set. You know, they say we don't want to have to fight that again. You know, and that really has stuck with me in a huge way. So I'd say those are the two kind of big things I've taken away are one, that feeling of like war is real. Like for us, for the countries that perpetrate war, we don't, you know, like the US, we don't see the effects of it up close, right? Um, so seeing like a population that's genuinely, you know, been affected by imperialism and war and humiliation, you know, that was a huge, huge thing for me. And the other one was seeing a country that, even by the accounts of Western scholars who study this stuff, the experience of the average Chinese citizen over the last, you know, 6, 7 decades has been that every day is better than the next. You know, it's helped me, I think, articulate a positive vision for the future, you know, because I think we all get wrapped up in critiquing, and I think we've all become very good at that because of our own circumstances that we live under in our country. But in terms of what do we want to build? Like, what would we want a future to look like? I think going to China and learning about China has been hugely, hugely helpful for me on that. So I don't want to go on too long. I feel like that's kind of my spiel a little bit. I really just like want to say on the history thing, you know, reading about China through the book club has been so helpful, and I really am happy to continue to go to that. And yeah, just I just think that it's been so great finding this community to learn more about to like actually have these discussions around something positive, around something that these things that we're empowered to do has been so great, and I'm just really grateful to have this community and everything. So I think that's pretty much it from me. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Marcella. If you have any questions for Marcella, then put them in the chat, and I'll try to be brief with my background, but so we can hopefully get to some questions for our audience because I think we have some interesting questions. But yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, I'm Megan. I'm the Code Pink China is Not Our Enemy campaign coordinator. Um, and I like to think that I was never really clouded by the anti-China propaganda in the US because I've always been very fascinated. Even since I was a kid, I think I was 8 years old and I decided to learn Chinese. Just spawned out of nowhere, I think, as random interest do in children. But I had like a Chinese themed birthday party. I got like a little English to Chinese translation book. It was just a very pure natural interest. And that it sort of stuck around. I studied Chinese in high school. And also I had the experience when I was in middle school and in high school, my family took in Chinese foreign exchange students that lived with us for a number of years. So they became like brothers, family. They really enmeshed themselves and became very close with us. And so I had that opportunity also to learn about China through them, which just, you know, further increased my interest. And going into university, I decided to study in China for a year and continue my studies of Chinese Mandarin. And that year ended up just being the best year of my life. I tell people that all the time and they don't believe me. But it really was. I felt kind of an indescribable sense of just safety and community and pure, genuine kindness from people that I hadn't experienced in any other country that I traveled to. And you know, the more you learn about China, the more you just fall in love with it. Um, yeah, so I've always been very fond of China from just my experiences growing up, and the opportunity I had to live there. And I've also been very anti-imperialist by nature, so it was kind of a natural trajectory for me to get where I am. Um, of course, my work at Code Pink, I've continued to learn so much and brought in my knowledge of China because there's really an impossible amount to know and learn. But the more you do, the more you open yourself up to that, the the more your reality shifts and the more you recognize really how much China represents a force of hope in the world, in a world that has suffered immensely under the hegemony of the United States and US's imperialism and colonialism abroad. And we've really never been closer to war with China than we are right now. It's really on the horizon, and it's a terrifying, horrible thing to even conceptualize, let alone imagine the reality of that. And that's why the work we're doing is so crucial. And so I invite you to do whatever you can to join and mobilize and organize around around peace with China. Getting involved in our community, joining our China book club, our community working calls where we strategize what we're doing with the campaign. So if you have ideas about petitions, who we should target, actions we should take, join our working calls. I'm always so happy to hear from ideas of people because there's so much to do. And our community is really one of the strengths of this campaign. It's the most beautiful, tight-knit community of people who are so passionate about this. And I really treasure our working group calls. So please join us for those. And if you are interested in organizing soon, the Mid-Autumn Festival is this weekend, October 6th, and it's a great opportunity to do something locally. You can do anything, whether that's just getting some friends together, going out for Chinese food, supporting your local Chinese community, or doing lantern painting, which we did last weekend. So check out the guide that Grace just put in the chat for that. But yeah, and if you have any questions for me, feel free to also drop those in the chat. I'd be happy to answer anything. But I would like to give everyone a chance to answer some of the questions that were put in the chat by our audience members. And I did see earlier that somebody asked about interacting with people in China. I think it was a bit specific, but maybe we can make it more general to go around and ask everyone if they can talk about an experience they had interacting with a local person in China as something that surprised them or that they really treasure and took home. So Michael, why don't you kick it off if you have a.
You'll have to repeat that. I was focused on unmuting, so I didn't hear
Okay,
it.
no worries. Question was just asking about an interaction you had in China that with a local person. Maybe you learned something, you took something away that
Yeah.
surprised you.
No, I think the person, one of the people that we got to know the best was Charlie, our guide on the bus. And Charlie was an awesome guy. Um, he had kind of philosophical perspective, and he said something to me that really communicated something. And that was that when we were going to some of these historic sites, he said, I don't really believe in glorifying the things that happened during that time because so many people never came home. And that just really affected me emotionally and made me want to really, take cognizance of these human lives that were lost in this whole period in which China was being reborn. Their estimates are anywhere between 17 million and 35 million people died during World War II, the war with the Japanese, and the Civil War, and so on. And Americans have no grasp of that level of suffering. It's just a fundamental fact. And so we really need to counter that tendency on our part. And unfortunately, Americans love war because many of them do, because they don't feel the consequences. Anyway, that's one example. One thing I would like to have done more of is talk to more Chinese people, because I think that's one of the best ways to get a sense of a place.
Thank you, Michael. Kurt?
Um, yeah, I guess I would second everything Michael said. Yeah, ch talking to our guide Charlie was really amazing. At one point Charlie he would sing sometimes, and he sang a Bob Dylan song. I forget the lyrics and exact song right now.
Blowing in the wind.
Yeah, it's blowing in the wind. And he said that when he thinks of the when he thinks of he said when he was a young teen and he would listen to Blowing in the Wind and sing the song, he would think of China with a general fondness in his heart. And I think like ultimately like sometimes people want to know like how much totalitarianism did you experience in China or something like that. And the que the answer to that question is like it's just not it's kind of like the question isn't correct. Like like nothing bad happens if you think about China the way Chinese people do. Like only good things are going to come from that. So yeah, I think so. Yep, that's my answer. Thanks.
Thanks, Kurt. Dana, I bet you have a bunch of a bunch of great answers for this.
Yeah, I mean, 25 years. Imagine the most consistent thing that you've done in 25 years is take a microphone, find a space, and allow people to come on stage and freely speak whatever they want, and multiply that by, sometimes 25 rap battles a year all across the country, 60 cities. So all I have been doing is listening to people and hearing all kind of stories and talk about anything and everything. Um, one of the things that jumps out to me is a friend of mine. His son, he named his son Malcolm after Malcolm X, and he's just asking me. Many people are just flabbergasted and confused by why there's so much internal conflict in the United States. Like, why is everyone always fighting each other, and the political culture is so uh, just unproductive and unnecessary. So, but I did want to comment to some of the questions. I'll be super quick. People are asking like, what does China view about Palestine? What is China going to do about Venezuela? You can go to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's the best place to go, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and look all this stuff up. And you can get, it's better to hear it straight from the government itself for their position. But one thing I want to say is I think it's a big problem. This expectation of what China's supposed to be doing and how China's supposed to be doing and not doing enough. My question for those people is, what are you doing for China? Have you even taken the basic time out to kind of research and understand China's position and where China is in the world? Because if you want China to liberate Palestine or liberate Venezuela, um, China can't even liberate itself. It's surrounded by 313 U.S. military bases. There's 40,000 U.S. troops stationed in South Korea with nuclear weapons aimed at China. There's all these troops in Japan. China would love to get Taiwan back. So if China can't even accomplish those things, we need to be maybe kind of put into focus what position China truly is in. And I think once we have that greater understanding, we can see why China is moving with caution. But you will find out that China is moving in the right direction, and you want to get on that side and support China in its efforts.
Thank you so much, Dana. Marcella?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about an interaction we had in Shanghai, actually, several of us, after we went to one museum that had to do with the history of China in that kind of period we've been talking about, the first half of the 20th century. We actually started talking to one man at the end um, who had studied in the US actually. I think he studied in St. Louis. I can't remember what university. But one thing he did talk about how he was, afraid to go out at night in the US, which was really interesting. I think we kind of normalize a level of like violence for sure and a level of uh, unsafety, and we just kind of accept that within our own country. But really what was interesting to me, and he was a student of history, was his research actually had to do with Taiwan, the Taiwanese province of China. Um, and what was fascinating was to hear him, he was very openly talking about how, uh, like certain policies, that the Taiwanese government had carried out and, his different feelings and opinions on that, just freely and openly. And it was just very interesting. And he was somebody who interacts with, the media on both sides of that issue for sure. And so it was just interesting to me, to hear some, just a Chinese person, who was very deep in talking about, yeah, I mean, we talked about land reform, um, the land reform policies in Taiwan. He had, positive and negative things to say. And I just found that discussion to be very, very fascinating. Another interaction we had just really quick was me and a few other people when we were in the South in Roijin. We were walking down the street from the grocery store we had just visited just to check things out, and some guy on a motorcycle with his two kids pulled over and uh, asked us where we were from, like on Translate, so we were kind of just going back and forth on the phone because we couldn't communicate. But he asked us, he was like, "Oh, have you tried the oranges from here? They're really good." And because the region, that's what the region is known for. And he said, and we said no. And he said, "Oh, I have to bring them to you." And he's asking us when we were leaving and where he could bring us these oranges. And it was just such an example of hospitality. And like he was so curious about us, wanted to get to know us, like even though we were outsiders and there's not a lot of foreigners that come to this small city, right? So that curiosity and that interest and generosity really was lovely. So that's a really special memory for me.
Thanks, Marcella. One last quick question for each of you before we close out. Maybe we can keep it short, but why is it important for you specifically to get involved in the campaign and doing what you can to prevent a potential future war with China? And what do you recommend people do to get involved? Michael, over to you.
Yeah, well, I think it's incredibly important. I think it's important to the future of humanity. A war with China could easily go nuclear in itself and destroy human life on the planet or really set it back for sure. And the other thing is that I think China is on the right track. I really do. Not that everybody should do exactly what China does. Everybody has to do what makes sense within their own country and history. That's why they talk about socialism with Chinese characteristics. We need socialism with United States characteristics, basically. And that's what it'll be. It won't be otherwise. It has to be something created by the people. Anyway, there's a path forward. This is what people have to really understand. There's a way out of this mess. There's a path forward, and it's our government that is the primary obstacle and threat to the future of humanity. That puts a heavy responsibility on us who live here to do something about it in any way that we can, because that's a lot to be riding on something, the future of humanity. And so, it should be a top priority because the stakes are really high. And I'd like to see humanity continue. And I'd like to see human civilization flourish. And there's no good reason why it won't, unless somehow the desperate empire going down decides to take desperate measures. And that could happen.
Kurt?
Um, yeah, I would second everything Michael said, and I think when it comes to thinking about China, like, well, us in the U.S., we would be amazed if we just got healthcare in our lifetime, and everything that happened in China happened like in Joe Biden's lifetime. Like, I think Joe Biden was about 6 years old when the People's Republic of China was formed. And at that time, I think the life expectancy was about 30 years old. So it's like if if you have like real socialist development like that, that's something that we should keep for the earth, keep sacred. And I do think that China's economic model, an economic model that can deliver for its people the way it has and lifted 850 million people out of poverty. That economic model is what we need for humans to survive on the planet, just period. So that's my answer.
Thanks, Dana.
Okay, sorry guys. So why is it important? I'm going to read Admiral Samuel Paparo, who says, "I want to turn the Taiwan Strait into an unmanned hellscape using a number of classified capabilities so that I can make their lives utterly miserable for a month." And I could just share countless war plans and that I've seen and taking place in real time that motivate me to do what I do. And I think the best thing that people can do is join this campaign, be a part of it, and participate in all of the activities. Um, it, I've joined. I've only been in it barely 2 months, I think, and it's been a whirlwind. Every single activity is functionable, and it's very valuable. The book club, incredible. It's just after 25 years living in China, thinking I knew something, the book club has just been so helpful to study and read these things collectively. All of these seminars that are taking place. There's one amazing one coming up. Is it Charles? Charles from Child Collective on Palestine?
Yep.
Like you have to watch that. You have to go back, watch these seminars. And there's also just a ton of resources. There's like this Google Doc, which I'm still trying to figure out, where people are posting information for China's Not Our Enemy. We could, stay up to date and share different news and debate different topics if you have questions. So just participate, show up, check the website, see what activities are taking place. People like Megan working so hard to organize all these things. Just engage and be part of it. And um, all I can say is just in the past few months, I've met so many people that have traveled to China. So get on a plane and get over here, and the network is expanding so fast, and we're just helping each other in so many ways beyond what's being seen. And so I have a lot of hope for this group, and um, I just really want to encourage, especially people from that are active on other causes like Palestine. Just please take time to join this group so you can see the synergy between the two, and we're all in the same fight together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dana. And I put the links to both the Palestine China webinar and the book club in the chat for anybody who would like to join. And last one, Marcella.
Yeah, I just couldn't agree with everybody more. I'm really, really glad to be a part of this group. And I've just met so many fantastic people, not just traveling to China, which, we're all, really glad, I think, to have met one another, but also just through the group. I mean, I've just met so many great folks who are, in this for really good reasons, I think, for the right reasons. I think this is about preserving humanity, preserving a project that is worth preserving, a genuinely socialist project. And I think, if I have to leave it off anywhere, for me, a lot of this has been about challenging our conception of freedom. A lot of the basic kind of assumptions that we have as Americans, that freedom means speech, press, it means, free market, whatever. For me, it's been, especially this past year, it's been a journey of, like, what about freedom to move around? Freedom to have a good life, to be safe, to not be constantly on guard against being lied to, like there's really something to be said about looking elsewhere, about looking to China specifically. And just remember when people are trying to tell you one thing is free, one thing is authoritarian, they are lying to you. They are trying to get you on board in all likelihood for another war. So just want to leave it off by saying, be critical of those kind of things because what they're trying to do is just turn your brain off so you stop thinking about what's freedom, what's authoritarian dictatorship, just be on guard against those words for sure. Because I heard that my whole life. I went to China and it's a completely different thing, just completely different. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Marcella, and thank you, Dana, Michael, Kurt, all of you for joining us tonight. It's always great to see you and to talk to you and to hear from you. So thank you so much. And thank you to our audience too for joining us. I will pass it off to Grace to close us out.
Thank you all so much for sticking with us. Thank you to Megan, to Jody, and everyone who spoke on their interest, travels, and daily actions to say China is not our enemy. Every single time I'm on a call for the China's Not Our Enemy campaign or with one of our coalition members, who work on these campaigns, I learned so much, not only about China and about everybody's travels and interests and the books you guys are reading, but also about the regional and local work that we're doing right here in our own local communities, like Dana said and like Marcella said and everybody said tonight. So we've shared so many links and resources throughout the night. If you feel like you got lost in the chat, please do not worry. We have a follow-up email coming out with everything we spoke on tonight, as well as a new article and radio show coming to you later this week. And we have a bunch of other amazing actions planned to close out our China's Not Our Enemy campaign week, centering around the Mid-Autumn Festival that we've been talking about. And we're also going to be moving on to our War is Not Green week of actions next week. So you can find all the information for the end of this week and next week in the two links that I just shared. And you can look forward to an even more thorough follow through coming up. But once again, thank you all so much, and we'll